Let's bring in Democratic strategist and NewsNation contributor Kurt Bardella and Republican strategist Malik Abdul. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. What's the reaction from what you heard from Mick?
Well, I think Mick is actually spot on. The thing that keeps Republicans awake at night is when we go from teleprompter Trump to free riffing Trump. And that's where he always gets into trouble. And that's the thing that really, I think, concerns them when it comes to those independent swing voters that they're going to need to carry in a general election. This isn't a Republican primary. The red meat things like, oh, we'll just throw that person in jail and have them investigated. Those get big applause lines and laughs in Republican primaries. General election voters go, I'm not sure that's the direction that we want to go. And so the biggest challenge that they're going to have in the general election is going to be trying to keep Trump to stay as disciplined as possible and minimizing those rifts that often turns into gaffes, which turn into controversies and headaches.
Like, ahead of today's primary, the president actually spoke to, he was the keynote speaker at the Black Conservative Federation dinner in Columbia. Let's listen in, and then I'll talk to you guys on the other side.
Over the past 8 years, we've energized the Republican Party, and we've expanded the Republican Party. You and I have made it bigger, better, and so much more interesting than ever before.
It's interesting.
It's
very interesting.
So, Malik, we've talked about this before. The Democrats seem to be losing a little bit of steam when it comes to Biden, especially black Democrats. What do you think Trump can do to get those votes for him and his campaign?
Well, full disclosure, I'm the former vice president of the Black Conservative Federation, so I knew that Donald Trump was actually coming last night, and it's part of the larger plan that the campaign has in targeting black voters. I think everyone knows the issue with Donald Trump is his personality.
Right.
That's the issue with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, I imagine, will come out with a number of policies similar to his Platinum Plan that he came out with in 2020. In fact, and that was the first time an incumbent president actually had a plan that was specific to black voters. But let's be clear, those plans will be things that benefit all Americans. So he'll talk about how he's going to do things around business development. He'll talk about education. He may even talk about health care. Some of those things, but none of the things will be specific to the black community. It will be a larger conversation that they're having.
And I'm just looking at this poll on the screen right now. I think this is very, very telling. Now, Haley is sharpening the contrast between her and the former president. She's spending millions of ad dollars here. She released an ad calling Trump the commander in chaos. Do you think her messaging is landing here with Democrats?
I think that's the message you're going to hear from Democrats, actually, in this election, which is the choices, once again, between competency or chaos. And I think that's a very compelling message. I think Nikki Haley's not going to really be able to make a lot of ground, but I think she knows that. Again, Nikki Haley's not in this to win this. As Mick pointed out before, there's really no path to victory for her. But when you are someone like her, and there's no second act here, like she's not going to be in the Trump cabinet. She's not going to be in the Trump ticket. She's not going to have a place in Trump's Republican Party. There's no incentive to get off the stage right now, so she's going to stay on it and keep throwing some haymakers at him. And for Democrats, they're sitting back going, this is fantastic. This is a preview of our general election messaging strategy. And again, competency versus chaos. Trump sometimes plays into it with the rhetorical ninja that he does, which Mick talked about in the last segment too.
And Malik, Haley won one county in Iowa, one county in New Hampshire, 0 counties in Nevada. Do you see her walking away with any counties today?
If past is prologue, absolutely not. And that's the risk for Nikki Haley, because if she does not win tonight, and I'll actually disagree a bit with Mick, it doesn't matter if she comes within 2 points of losing. She lost. And that means that she would not have won not one state since she's been in the primary. And so if she decides to go into Super Tuesday, which is when 1/3 of the delegates will be chosen, and risk the potential of losing every single state, beyond the embarrassment, her political future is over.
Yes, I would say the money keeps pouring in for her.
I mean, and that's exactly it. The question of when will Nikki Haley get out, it's when the money dries up. And I'll disagree slightly. If she ends up somehow pulling it off where she loses this South Carolina primary by less than 10% instead of losing by 30, I mean, if 40% of Republicans, primary voters, vote for someone other than Donald Trump, like that is a problem for Donald Trump that they cannot ignore, especially again, looking at the broader big picture general election dynamic.
Malik, thank you so much.